Well, the common theme really that we've been talking about is ICT professionalism in Europe and the status of the IT profession. And as we have heard, the focus is on maturing the IT profession, and our short-term aim collectively, I believe, is for a fully professionalised IT sector. And we will see that by ensuring that there is a commitment to a relevant body of knowledge, a set of standardised competences, which we have already, we're moving along the road already, and a programme of continuous professional development, education, training, certification, and a clear and agreed code of professional ethics. So the progress that we've seen is the establishment of the standard, and as we know, we've heard several times, the revised version will be coming out early next year. So work is underway to establish a body of knowledge, education and certification, all of these other pillars, and I'll talk about those in a moment, the other project proposals which are in the machinery and hopefully will have a positive outcome shortly. We now have an updated set of professional role profiles. The number has increased from 23 in the original set, in the original CW8 to 30 now. And all of this work is fully incorporated into the rolling plan for ICT standardisation. I think that's really good. It means that we're working as part of the general policy thrust within Europe. Quality and credibility, I think, are absolutely central if our focus is on professionalising and making sure that we have a mature IT profession. So we have now a very well-established and agreed standard in the ECF. We have the complementary role profiles, as I said, and within this context of the work which has started and work which is in the pipeline, there are lots of opportunities for further developing this and for everybody to get involved. I think it's really important, if this is going to be truly a European project, that it is accepted and implemented throughout Europe, and that representatives from as many countries as possible get actively involved in the work to progress it. I don't need to go into the level of stakeholder involvement in putting together the work which has already been completed. It's given it a very strong level of credibility as well. The fact that that we have had such a high number of stakeholders right across the board, both involved through the CEN workshop for ICT skills and now through the Technical Committee 428. All aspects of the project have had industry and a complete range of stakeholders involved. So Fabio's gone through the history of moving from the CWA to a standard, etc., and so I'm not going to go through it again, the establishment of TC428. TC428 now is critically important as the driving body to ensure the maintenance of the work that's already been done and the continuation to ensure that all the unticked boxes are ticked. We see this slide regularly, but I think it's no harm to remind ourselves of the breadth of use of ECF already. It's quite impressive, and I think everybody here and the wider community that were involved in its development and its dissemination, etc., should be very proud of that, and we hope that it will grow even further. The professional role profiles, I think, are a critical development of the e-competence framework, because it's bringing us towards a practical implementation methodology, and that's what the project we're discussing today is all about, the ECF Alliance. It's about having a practical methodology, a way of taking the theory and bringing it into practice. And you know, the template and the construction and the format that these profiles are presented in have been very widely acclaimed, and organisations that have started using them have found them very helpful in managing their talent and their professional development, etc. And it's a way of bringing the ECF from being a document, just a list of competences, into the actual day-to-day experience of people who are managing IT departments. again, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but we know you probably all are very aware of the way it's structured in the family tree method of just navigating the 7 families and then the individual profiles, and critically the ability on the orange bar at the bottom there, the generation 3 aspect of this is what enables individual organisations to take the methodology and the structures and to create their own custom profiles, and that is critically important because businesses and IT departments vary so greatly from each other. So we have the theory and we have some tools starting to bring us to some examples of how the theory can be implemented in practice. And we know that right across Europe there have been individual organisations and champions who have tried to develop and to embed the work that's been done by this community and to have it make a difference. I can talk really only about my own experience and what we've done in Ireland, which is a very small project. It's not too unlike the work that's coming out of this project that we're going to hear more about today. But we have, after a long time of talking to people about ECF and talking about competence and talking about professional development and giving people pieces of paper and spreadsheets and all sorts of different ways of trying to navigate the great work and the acclaimed and acknowledged expertise that went into producing them, we found that it was really important that we would create a tool, a practical tool, that would enable the IT professionals to use the ECF, to look at their competence profile, to look at where they are in their career, to see where they wanted to go, to plan that career, to act like real professionals and plan some professional development. So we created a tool which we call Career Plus, and it's only in its infancy. We've only got it really at the stage of a prototype, but it uses the ECF and the role profiles, the 30 role profiles, to enable individual professionals to assess their own competence, to assess to map their own roles against the standard roles, and to see where the gaps are in their current skill base and competence level, and to figure out what they need to do to bring themselves on to the next level, to the next job, to move either in a vertical or to move sideways and to navigate their way through their professional career. We operate on the premise that CPD, continuous professional development, should be tracked and reflected upon and planned. Maybe it should be mandatory. If we were in a stage where at a stage where we had a regulated profession, we could say it is mandatory, like in many other professions. You must do so many hours per year. But even if it's mandatory, it's important that it's appropriate and that there is some methodology or some tool or some indicator to the individual professional and their IT manager and their department and their industry what they should do, what kind of professional development they should do to ensure that they're facilitating not only the organisation but themselves as professionals. Because when we talk about professionalism and we talk about industry and we talk about providing manpower for industry, it's really very important, if that's to be successful, that the individual professional feels that their needs are being satisfied, that there's a personal gain for them in how they perceive themselves and in how they can plan their careers and how they can be successful. So the CPD has to be relevant both to the individual and the organisation. The rest of the story, once we have the standard established for the competence, is to look at the other 4 pillars, and you all are familiar with them. So the plan is that standards or standardized outputs will be developed around the other pillars. And TC428 is absolutely central to doing that work. This technical committee is responsible for the standardization activities related to the maturing of the IT profession. So it's a really exciting brief, I suppose, for a technical committee to have. It's going to be in the future responsible for maintaining and evolving the ECF. That will involve interacting with other frameworks. Only a couple of miles away from here, or a couple of kilometres away from here today, there's an ECF Sophia workshop taking place, so that engagement is actually happening as we speak. The technical committee will be involved in, curriculum guidance, evolving the role profiles, and providing guidance for assessment against the ECF, working with the body of knowledge, again developing education, training, certification models, and developing the code of ethics. And that's all. That's like a summary really of what the plan moving ahead is. So we're very hopeful that work is about to start on developing some of these other pillars. Again, Fabio has talked about all the components of the standard that are being updated, the user guide, methodology, case studies, all of that. That is ongoing. There are other projects which are in the pipeline. We're very, very hopeful that they will be getting off the ground shortly. 2 in the education certification pillar, 1 under ethics, and 1 under the foundational body of knowledge. Just briefly on, just a word about those projects. The curriculum guidelines will be looking at providing guidelines for creating curricula for high-tech and e-leadership skills, all in the context of IT professionalism. And it's important that value propositions are prepared for the industry and for professional associations and for the education and training providers. The market requirements, of course, are very important. Like I said, I personally think that personal development and career progression is equally important, but we have to keep an eye on the market. As we always do, the stakeholder involvement and consultation is important, and we need to make sure that what is delivered is sustainable. The performance indicators, and there are people in the room here who could speak far more eloquently about these projects because they're the experts who have put the proposals together, but just in summary, the e-competence performance indicators and common metrics, this is absolutely critical, I think, this, because it's all very well having a framework of competences and having systems whereby people can assess themselves or even be assessed by peers or by line managers, etc. But it's really important that there are some criteria to measure those assessments and to validate those assessments. And I think that's really what this project is all about. And there is previous work that will be referenced as this comes to fruition, work on quality labels and e-leadership, etc. And eventually the results of this project will be published, assuming that it gets funding and goes ahead, will be published as a technical report. That's the plan. Any profession worth its salt has a professional code of ethics. We have to have an agreed code of ethics for the IT profession. It's going to be tricky. I think it really is. I think that the more I hear people discussing this in the broader IT community, the more difficult I think it's going to be to come up with this agreed code of ethics. But I think it's a challenge, and I think it's a challenge worth taking on, because at the very least we should be able to identify what the obstacles are to coming up with an agreed code. So that will be a very, very interesting project to watch, and I think be kind of a spectator sport to see how that goes on. The body of knowledge is probably a little bit more straightforward, although we know that there are multiple bodies of knowledge when you look at the breadth of the IT sector and the different domains and the different kinds of activities that go on. But I think that based on some early work that was done by CEPUS and IVI, Innovation Value Institute, and Capgemini, Ernst & Young, etc., there's a lot of material that can be used as a starting point for this, to come up with a common agreed core body of knowledge. So it's not going to cover the universe, it's going to cover the core elements. And again, it has to be consistent with the work and frameworks and standardisation, etc., in existence already. So, as you see, the main areas of activity for the Technical Committee are the maintenance and evolution and keeping up to date the standard, ECF, being aware of the other frameworks that are out there and making, recognising that ECF is a framework and we know it's the best framework, but that there are other frameworks there and we have to be we have to be aware of them and see how we can collaborate with them. I think it's important that people take on board the concept of using a framework, and then we'll promote ECF, but we have to recognise that the other frameworks exist and look for synergies and mappings between them where we can. We know we've done a lot of work with Sophia, we've talked to the Japanese about their competence dictionary, etc., and there are others as well. So developing the standards or technical specifications or technical reports on the remaining 3 pillars, that's high on the agenda for the Technical Committee. And maintaining and updating other relevant CWAs, and Fabio also mentioned the CWA on the training for ICT professionals in universal design, and that's work which is ongoing at the moment. Some new areas that are probably likely to be coming up for discussion are looking at competences in other ICT domains, business adoption, security, healthcare, fintech, cloud, blockchain, etc. And looking at maybe some strategies to align them with the core content and structure of the current standard. And in due course, and I know that there's a project going on which is doing this kind of work, and it's very much of interest to the Technical Committee as well, is to look at complementarity with organisational capability frameworks. I think that there's it's nice to consider that we would have the view from the organisation, maybe looking down, and then the individuals who make up that organisation contributing through their competences. So that's the e-competence website. And I just wanted to say that it really is, I think it's really important that we get as many people involved in this as possible, into the, through national standards bodies, through local mirror committees, etc. I think it's really important to get as many people as possible involved in the Technical Committee and in the standards development. Really, really critical, so that we do have a consensus on what's delivered. That's not for everybody. There may be some people who would be interested in either or joining IT Professionalism Europe, and Ostea is here. I'm sure she'll talk maybe a little bit about it as well. And that is a professional network. It provides I don't know.